I think I win the award for most variation between appearances on the More or Less pod. Will you guys give me that?
True.
Maybe.
I think so.
You look good. You have makeup on?
That's fair.
I have a shit ton of makeup on.
It's good.
Looks great.
Meanwhile, I'm in my beach chic. No makeup, no hair done.
You guys look great. Oh, you're on spring break. Have we started recording?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we
did
can keep
start
going.
recording.
Oh, hi.
Do you want to start again?
You got to let it roll.
Yeah, we just got to...
Wait, why does Sam have a kettlebell?
I saw an Instagram post that showed this guy doing like a kettlebell workout throughout his workday, and it seemed like a good idea. So I bought one kettlebell.
Don't you need hands? Like, while the Zoom screen? Like, what's he doing? Like the?
No, he does this, apparently. Like, I'm going to do this during meetings.
Yeah, that's horrible. I would get off the meeting the second
There's a
someone
new
did
trend
that.
of men actually packing kettlebells with them on trips.
That would require men to pack.
No. As Jess knows, one of my great guilty things was during COVID, I traveled with pretty legit adjustable weights everywhere and would check them. And I felt bad about it for the amount of fuel I was wasting, because it was literally like I just carried dumbbells.
How much extra did you have to pay? Is it like $150 per flight just to bring your kettlebells?
He's not going to know the answer to that question.
I don't want to talk about it, but I did do it. My theory was it was cheaper than like Amazoning new ones to different locations.
Why don't you just get bags of sand? Let's pause the train of consciousness and welcome everyone to this week on More or Less, where I think the tenor of our intro is really going to lay the ground for what I hope will be a great episode. Because
Jess, you're seeming kind of punchy right now. I'm just going to give you this. You're punched up.
I am so exhausted.
She's in New York. They're punchy there.
Pure fumes. I'm in New York. I'm on event. I just finished event 3 of 3.
Ooh.
Been on quite the event bender.
You guys, events are back. We've talked about this. We've talked about this with Julia Hartz, who is people really liked that episode. Sorry, Britt. I would have been better with you too, but she did. Everyone liked it.
She's a good 7.
I'm just exhausted.
Speaking of Eventbrite, little fun fact, speed dating is taking the lion's share of events being booked right now. Julia shared this on Instagram the other day because people are like wanting to give up dating apps and actually meet in real life instead because they're sick of the dating apps. So I feel like the pendulum is totally swinging backwards, and that's an interesting proof point. Okay, but we can keep our intros going.
Okay. Well, I'm excited for this week. We've got the full quad, and there's a lot to talk about. Do you guys have anything you'd like to start with?
Well, Dave was getting really punchy himself a couple minutes ago about OpenAI, so maybe we start with that.
Yeah, Dave, tell us about theft.
I just was taken aback by the New York Times article this week on OpenAI's kind of grand larceny of data.
Yeah, it was a great piece. I'm really glad they did it.
There's just nothing. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, but to see it written in print and I don't know, to contemplate what this means is kind of, I don't even know how to think about it, actually. It's so ridiculous.
Can you detail out what it said for people that don't know?
I don't know. I feel like Jess probably has a better fact for fact running.
You know what the best encapsulation of it is? You guys remember Carmen Sandiego, where she'd like go and steal monuments around the world? You're like, I stole the Eiffel Tower. It's like, as we've been saying the whole time, but is now documented, it's like OpenAI is the Carmen Sandiego of the internet. They just stole the internet.
The way I'd sum it up is that this article, which was really nicely done, confirmed everything we kind of knew, and especially you guys have been talking about on the pod, or we all had, which is, what are these models trained on? They're trained on the broader internet, including copyrighted data and, a lot of professional IP that's protected. I think this, among the things documented in this story, was actually transcribing just YouTube video transcriptions.
Yeah. To me, that was the most kind of insane thing that was
and why do you
really
say
well
insane,
documented.
Dave? Like, unpack what you think is insane about that.
Well, as I understand it, what happened was they created some kind of crawler called Whisper, I believe, that went out and transcribed every single YouTube video and then, loaded it up, and then they trained their model. And the doctrine, and this, by the way, was also, I think Meta was pretty well covered in this article as well. And there were actually, transcribed internal meetings for Meta. And virtually everyone is using the doctrine of fair use, or at least that's what they want to lean on.
They think that they're using it, correct.
That's what they want to lean on. And it just seems pretty ridiculous to me. Like, that's effectively like, I'm not even sure what it's like. I don't know, going out and saying that you're going to steal the entire internet, steal all the content, and then generate new content and claim fair use just seems beyond the pale to me, and a little bit egregious. And I actually don't know what more there is to say about it.
Well, look, to me, the biggest thing, honestly, that's OpenAI specific on this is just the idea that, again, you have to remember the roots of this and kind of their intentions. Is like, it was basically this non-profit-y story where, like, you'd be like, sure, you can use it for research purposes. Research is cool. Like, research goes in a lot of directions. And, like, if you want to scrape a bunch of data and do some research projects, great. There's like, in some ways that feels okay. But then to turn around and be like, aha, now it's a for-profit company, right? That's the one that, like, gets me the most, right?
This happened after the change to for-profit. This happened in this
but it's
time
the
period.
Branding and the whole positioning. It's like, I think there's like a lot of things where you say, like, in the pursuit of science or truth, there are data sets that you open up, or like you're willing to collaborate on things, but then
But there was never that request for permission or collaboration. I mean, I think Dave nailed it. And to this day, OpenAI, Google, any of these companies will say, oh, it's totally fair use. I mean, there are court cases that will take a decade, unfortunately. And they're saying it's fair use, which is a part of copyright law when you're taking copyrighted content and then just paraphrasing or taking out a sentence or two.
Yeah.
And I think, Dave, you described it well, like wholly ingesting the entirety of it to then create an entirely new or different thing. To me, this is very clear in that this shouldn't be allowed. And now OpenAI is saying, well, what we did in the past was fine. Now we'll let you opt out. But again, we've already trained our models.
Yeah. It's
like they already have the math, right? They already have the math. And I guess, like, I'm caught between two worlds here, which is that I really think this technology is amazing. And I really think that the team over there at OpenAI is amazing. But at the same time, it's just so hard to think that this is okay. And what are the implications of this? And it's kind of a bummer to think that nothing's going to happen, and that it's just like, what are we telling our children?
Well, Britt, as a media owner, content creator, where do you come down on this?
I mean, I feel like this is the same conversation we've had many times. It's just like, no, it's not cool. Totally sucks. But there's nothing that we can do about it. It's going to take the government many years, and then we're all going to move on, and the genie's out of the bottle. And so now it sucks. It's like the end of one phase of the internet, on to the next.
The place that technologists excuse themselves on this is, look, this is what, Uber did, right? This is like, you front run the law, right? There have been people front running the law, this is even going back to the days of like early web browsers where like they wanted to have encryption like in Netscape. And so they made you click a box being like, I'm in the United States, so that you're not technically exporting encryption technology when that was considered a weapon, right? Like, there's this whole thing about front running the law. And like, I just think it's like, I like the Wild West of it to a point, right? But I also think there's like a morality to it, especially when you're dealing with pretty fundamental things, right? I think like in this case, like the problem I have is like people effectively mining all this stuff, building it in the season and turning around and attacking the people that produced it, right? Which is like literally what's happening in this case.
Well, exactly. And I think that what you're describing, Sam, is like, find me a company that doesn't like a good loophole or think they found a good tech loophole or something. But I actually think the window where the media business can act to put an end to this is like shrinking. But there are plenty of times where some tech company thought it did find a loophole and then they faced a backlash and they weren't able. So
the thing, I also just put the employee hats on, right? Which is like, I think that if you think about it, it's like tech employees, a lot of them have their morals, not all of them, but most of them do, right? And if you said to most engineers, hey, we're going to go steal all of YouTube and we're doing it to like create a private index of data, and then we're going to like make it easy to generate videos and like destroy all the value that was built by those people and not share with them. Like, then you'd have a lot of engineers like opting out. The interesting, this is why the research thing is so interesting, because when you just say it's research, don't worry, it's research, then you're like, all these people are like, well, it's research. We're not doing anything bad. We're researchers. We're private market researchers. And that kind of changes what people are willing to do versus not do. Right.
I bet in this case, Sam, in this case,
on.
they didn't even think of themselves as researchers. I think they thought, this reminds me in a much smaller case of a Rippling situation. So if you guys remember, Rippling helped startups offer insurance.
No, it was before Rippling. It was the one that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Zenefits. Yes, God, please, not Rippling. Rippling fixed the problem. But Zenefits was helping companies offer insurance in a lot of different jurisdictions and states, and it was complicated. And they thought, oh, how clever. We have to take all these licensing tests. But actually, with this little bit of software, we've saved a step in the test. You're still going to answer the questions, but like you don't have to like run out the clock. So you can be more efficient about getting these certifications or something like that. And, at the time, it's just like, oh, look how clever we are. And I think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could turn the content in YouTube into a language model? Wouldn't it be cool if we could transcribe? Oh, yeah, well, it's on the internet, so we should be able to do that. It's like, no, this is what happens. It's a governance issue, guys.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of not written this way. It's written as kind of a almost purely mathematical question. They ran up against this limit where they were like, okay, we have the whole internet ingested now, except YouTube and some other things. And we can't get further in the quality of this technology without vastly more data, right? And so do we go and acquire whole hog? Like Meta was talking about acquiring whole hog, entire, publishers.
Which showed they had a concept. Just interrupt you. That shows that like they kind of knew, oh, this is the stuff that we would have permission to use versus the stuff we wouldn't.
That's kind of, for me, the thing that has me so fired up about this, which is that here's a bunch of teams, not just one, but many AI teams standing on the precipice of making a moral decision. And they knew they either needed to pay for it or steal it. And some of the teams chose to steal it instead of paying for it. And they knew they were doing this, and they had to do it in order to create these technologies to the level of quality that there was a paper that came out that kind of basically said the more data, the better the quality is going to get. And so they kind of knew, and you can just look at it on a chart, that the best technologies at that point in time had a certain amount of data, and to get to where they needed to go much, 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 much higher. And so it was kind of a choice. There were two directions, and the choice was explicitly made to go the immoral direction. And I think that's like the interesting question here.
I agree. And then Sam's point, I think, is really relevant. Like, they're going up against an industry that is just gutted and can't fight and stand up to them, in part, and is so paralyzed by fear, in part based on what they think this technology is going to do to them. And it's a really tough situation. And
yeah, but I mean, also just all's fair in business and competition, right? Like, aren't we supposed to have
it's theft.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you had to go and actually do the business development deals, right, to get to get this data, and you had to go and do a deal with YouTube, you had to go and do deals with publishers, like, then the stakes of competition would be as simple as who can execute the best, who can field the best team, who can get these deals done and do business like the rest of us do business. But in this case, it was we're just going to run ahead as fast as possible and literally steal. And I think that's like what should I've been asking this question, like, what should America do about this? And is it really going to take 10 years?
Yeah, I was going to ask, it seems like there's a non-zero chance that OpenAI would ever just get shut down. Like, is this actual theft to the detriment of its existence, do you think? Like, if the government...
I mean, we've been saying this is the Napster moment, right? We've said this how many times?
Believe it or not, Napster's still a company.
It's a Napster moment, but like, guys, I just can't. I mean, I'm here in New York, and I'm just like pretty distraught about the attitudes in the publishing industry of what to do about this. And I think 6-12 months ago, the rhetoric was much more, how do we fight it? And the rhetoric now is like, how do we get them to go from 2 million to 3 million for licensing it?
Which will still not save your publishing business.
Which will not save your publishing business is the definition of insanity. And to be clear, not because in the future there's no deal that, I mean, some publishers could do that would be win-win. But right now, it's just like there aren't even products that consumers are using enough with news in them. There's not even enough economics. I guess I'm talking about a very specific part of the media business. There aren't even like economics to share in the licensing of it, right? So like this is not the moment to do these deals. But the only one really left standing up is the New York Times, which has a big lawsuit against OpenAI. And others that like News Corp, my former employer, was talking a really tough game and then did a 180 in their tone and is now like, we're going to negotiate instead of sue. And it's just sad, honestly. Again, not because some publishers shouldn't do licensing deals with AI companies. I mean, right now, I can't imagine what would be a good deal to do, but like maybe that is a revenue stream. We talked about this with regards to Reddit, but it's just really bleak. But will it put OpenAI out of business? No, I don't think so, because like they can fight these lawsuits. You know, there's not clear like other kind of regulatory stuff breathing down their neck, but they're in a rush to button up these licensing agreements because they do feel some kind of pressure, and the news stories like this are going to keep coming. And last thing I'll say on this, I was meeting with a major publisher in LA who was saying that, you know, they were looking back in time at their logs. And a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, they saw these really weird patterns in their traffic, like these huge spikes in their sites getting hit, and then they go away, and these huge spikes. And at the time, they had no idea what was going on. And now in hindsight, those were the moments, those were being crawled by the LLMs.
I'm going to go look
and
at
they
the
can
traffic.
Literally see it.
Yeah.
There's something eerie about that.
Well, I don't know. I just think it's like, look, in the end of the day, it's like the internet really exists fundamentally. It's like it's a capitalist machine, right? And like the deal that Google created with everyone and actually ripped a lot of people off on, but convinced them of, is that there was an economic trade, right? Up ahead of us is like, you let us crawl you. In return, we send you traffic. Now, did a bunch of publishers screw that up because they overvalued the traffic and the Google story? Absolutely. But like that was their own funeral. Like it was a very clear upfront trade, being like, we offer you a deal, you accept it, you don't. It's an economic machine. I think the thing that I think is really challenging here is like the internet only works because it's economically rational. In fact, its failures are places where it's economically irrational, right? Is like, that's why you get a bunch of engaging content and not all the most information you'd want, right? It's like, it's just pure economics. And the problem with these kind of LLM things is they break economics because they steal, but they give nothing back. And so even like a cents on the dollar licensing deal or whatever, that's not investing in the ecosystem of knowledge, of information globally, right? And the net is like, look, there's basically three things you can think about in terms of LLMs and the value they can extract. One is just like pure word association, as much words as possible. It doesn't matter where they're from. In which case, the reality is like the ultimate goal, like content producers don't produce that much content. Right? It's like you want text messages. Like you get all of the text in the world from all the people chattering all day long. That's the actual prize. You know, Facebook has access to it in some form, maybe talk about encryption, blah, blah, blah. But like that's the real place for just sheer scale. Then there's the question of
although,
characters.
Sam, to put a point on that, they addressed that in the article. And Facebook/Meta actually said that the short form text wasn't enough because it wasn't dialogue. There wasn't enough dialogue. And I actually found that to be a really interesting tidbit.
You mean posts, or are you talking about text messages back and forth?
Posts, and it didn't differentiate
the
between
posts,
posts and text.
I believe the posts that's correct. It's not enough content. It's not linked deeply enough. There's not enough chatter. You know, look, the text message is a whole other version of the world, because then you're talking about encryption and privacy and da-da-da-da. But like that's the ultimate prize for pure word, like just scale, right?
Sure.
That dwarfs anything the New York Times produces. Then there's IP, right? So that's the second bucket. One is just scale. The second bucket is IP, which is like, I want to reference that character or that human or that Picasso, whatever. And there, I think the reality is the rights holders have stronger arguments, right? And they're going to be able to enforce more and get more value versus just scale. And the third, which is what Jessica is probably most focused on, is just news, which is topicality, what's happening now. Like LLMs have no idea what's going on in the real world. They're just statistical machines, basically. And so the interesting thing about that is like, that's the one I think, I mean, I am Jessica's husband, but like I'd be most worried about too, because bucket 1 is a mess and is never coming back. Bucket 2, there'll be rights figured out. Bucket 3 is where you actually break the internet and you break knowledge, right? Because if you basically create an extractive machine that takes all the economics out of reality and information, sticks them in an LLM in some form, and doesn't actually have a flywheel which contributes back to that economics, which even the New York Times to the Google would claim there was with free news, then you're fucked, right? Because then you basically are going to stop producing knowledge and sharing it. And that's the real problem.
And I would add to that science has not yet proven that you can create higher quality LLMs using AI generated data.
No, you definitely can't. Like, let's be clear.
Let's let Dave finish.
There's this theory in the article, and they talk about it. And we've heard this theory bandied about quite a bit, that you can create more, like infinitely more data using some form of future AI technology, and that will be enough to train these future models and train them up to be smarter and smarter. But there's no science that suggests that this is actually possible that has been released.
From a first principles perspective, I'm a first principles guy. Like, let's get through the mumbo jumbo here. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Like, it does make sense that you could run 1,000 experiments if you actually had a real environment much faster and maybe discover a drug faster if you knew the rules of how molecules fit together. So, like, there's stuff you can run at scale, and I agree with that. But the problem is just drift, right? Which is like, if you have a machine, it's like a photocopier. It's like, this is not complicated shit. Like, yeah, you produce more content, but it's photocopies of photocopies of photocopies of photocopies. You lose resolution to reality. It's just, so all these things, people, the fancy people with the PhDs like to like make these kind of assertions that like, oh, and like it's very AGI narrative, right? Which is like, we just need to like jumpstart the fire and then it'll burn itself and become perfect. But like, it doesn't actually make any sense.
Which I guess is the point I was trying to make, which is that the LLMs, the AI needs humanity, right? You need more human-generated dialogue and text in order to create higher quality models. So in order to achieve this better quality AI goal that everyone's talking about, we need to figure out a better balance of the incentives in the system. Because right now, there is no balance. It's just pure, take it all for me, leave you guys behind.
Well, you know what it is? It's communism. AI is like a deeply communist technology, right? It is against the free market. It's against, in every way, shape, or form. It's very religious, right? I guess religion and communism don't mix.
Is there a product sort of feature that would make this more palatable for publishers like Google? Google scrapes. They sort of give you the one paragraph, couple sentences in the headline and the search result.
The product feature is called pay content creators their fair share.
Well, no, like
I could just sit back here and let you guys do all the advocating.
The story you could get to, which I've heard people is the right thing, is you could imagine a world where like an AI has a question and you get a push notification. It's like, Sam, I'll pay you $10. What's the answer to blah, blah, right? And in a world in which the AI creates a flywheel of actually getting people to say shit to it that wouldn't otherwise be published and that couldn't otherwise be found, that's kind of like the magical market future one where like, the problem is that that's going to get bid to zero for anything commodity. If you're like, oh, I'm going to text 10,000 people to get the right answer, like you're not going to get paid on that. Like it's not actually an economic model that's going to work in practice, although it's a nice idea in theory. And two, for anything bespoke, there's no price that would be enough because you basically are giving up any leverage on it.
So, Britt, it's so interesting. I had a conversation with an editor last summer when these conversations were heating up. And he was saying, Jessica, we just need the equivalent of the 10 blue links. Because as publisher was saying, right, in the search ecosystem, there was that payback, right, which was, quote,
right, if you're in the
traffic.
Top few links. Mm-hmm.
Again, what publishers learned, I thought, over the last 10 years was that was kind of an illusion. That like the traffic back from these links wasn't the economic engine to support the high quality journalism they all wanted to do. And in fact, in many cases, it distracted them from doing that. And so it actually does baffle me now that publishers are back at the table when, okay, OpenAI and others are saying they'll link to the sources. But again, it's like if you're a citation in an answer, at best, you're getting a modicum. If you're a citation in a service with a fraction of the users, right? And by the way, you're a citation.
What if they guaranteed a certain number of
what if Facebook had guaranteed traffic to BuzzFeed News? Oh, wait, it did. And now they're bankrupt. Like, I mean, BuzzFeed News doesn't exist.
They failed on their promise.
But I just think that, like, I'm so deeply interested in this because I think it reveals the depths of the disease spreading throughout the media industry, because it's like publishers are doing it. It's like they've forgotten that they did this. It didn't work. The businesses all went away. They got new jobs. And now they just like want to continue to negotiate with Silicon Valley because it's fun. Like,
no. I think it's much simpler than that. You have two types of people in the media industry. You have the media business talent, which, with a few exceptions, I have to say that because there are some people I like, they're bees, right? They're not very talented.
Not at the information, but yes.
In general.
There are a few bees in the media industry, not at the information.
Yeah, not just
Here we go.
And it's because, like, think about it. It's like, it's just a worse business model. People who do it are just, on average, and there are exceptions, let me be very clear for those listening, they're going to yell at me for this. Most of the talent's not very good. And then there are the owners, right? And the owners probably fit into one of two categories. The owners of publishing either A, actually like own a bunch of AI stock anyway, so like, right? And so like it's kind of like a trade either way. Or B, they're just like, look, it's gonna be 10 years of lawsuits. I'm not gonna win, so fuck it. Right?
But like, this is so dangerous. And then we can move on, because guys, I could go on. How long do you have? That is such a dangerous mentality, and our industry and journalism deserve better than that mentality.
I would level that up, Jess. I think the internet deserves better than that,
and
humanity deserves better than that. Like, I think the fine point here is that these models aren't going to get better without humans. And so we have to figure out how to create an economic incentive structure that incentivizes both sides. Otherwise, we end up at this kind of, I think, mediocre middle, and the technology doesn't reach its potential.
But again, I just think from first principles, and then I'll stop with the first principles things. But like, there's only, like, think about all the information in the world, right? And what you can access. There's information that lots and lots of people know. The clearing price for that information is precisely zero, right? Like, if lots of people know something, it doesn't matter how it gets on the internet, or if OpenAI bids 1 cent for someone to tell them an answer to something, the clearing price is zero. And then there's extremely valuable things that most people don't know. And the clearing price for that should be really, really fucking expensive. And the problem with the media industry, right, is that in general, it exists between those two zones, right? Like, a lot of their value is zero. And then every once in a while, there's something really valuable, but they kind of mush it all together, and they don't know how to treat it economically. The future is going to be almost like, this is what happened after the printing press, is the news got super scummy and shitty, and all the elites retreated to super high price Italian private newsletters to know what was actually going on in the world. That's just what's going to happen again, right? Like, the clearing price, no much information is zero. There'll be a lot of crap out there. And then people who really care or have a stake in reality, which, by the way, is the minority of humans, right, are going to pay a shitload for things that are not available to the models.
I agree that that's what's going to happen, Sam, and I think it's really bad. I think it's really bad for democracy. I had lunch with the governor of Massachusetts, was sitting next to her, and she's like just really worried about the point of this from like elections. And then, we were talking a lot about female reproductive rights and all of this stuff. So I guess my question to you guys is like, what should we do about it?
Buy expensive newsletters?
Well, it may end up being
expensive newsletters.
I don't know. We'd have to get into a deeply technical
podcast. That's what we should do.
We should spreading the word.
Guys,
we're
Dave's
advocating.
trying to actually answer my question.
All right.
Okay, no hot takes, Dave.
Wait, what just happened?
Me and Sam are getting feisty. Go, Dave.
No, I just think that maybe we've talked about it before, but it's the tale of two internets, right? And I think Sam's probably right. Like, maybe we end up with two internets. It's like the magazine rack in the newspaper store or in the airport, where you've got your subscription side and your free side, and the free side is exactly as Sam described, and the paid side is also exactly that. And I don't know, I worry that technically splitting these things apart, I don't know, maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe we're going to return to the old days of the internet, where we had AOL and CompuServe and Prodigy. And
well, it's worse than that. We're going to go back to straight up feudalism, right?
Yeah, but that was feudalism, right?
Well, no, but I'm saying like real feudalism. I mean, this is the China-U.S. communist capitalism does democracy work in the internet age. It all comes back to this, right? Which is like the economic and the biases of forming a public and reality like get really fucked. And like, you're like, how are you going to have democracy in this age? Like the answer is probably going to be it's really hard and messy, which is what it is reality. The really, like if you were writing the science fiction version is super simple, which is democracy just ends, right? It like can't
and the
survive.
Aliens invade, like the three-body problem.
Some would argue it's ended. To be clear, I don't think it's ended, but
we have to be wall facers. Is that what it's called?
Okay, I see you guys really want to pivot from this topic. Okay, but to put a fine point on it, we don't have answers. And that's okay. We don't need to know it all.
Oh, we do. We know exactly how this is going to play out.
We're starting expensive newsletters.
Okay, we know how it's playing out, but we don't know how to fix it. The brightest minds, come on.
A round table. The court of King Arthur.
The court of King Arthur. Okay, guys. So say there were these aliens called the Santi, and they were 400 years away.
Oh my gosh.
How would you fight them?
You have to think about it only in your head is the answer.
So
you can't write it down or put it on the internet.
For listeners who are not caught up or familiar with the three-body problem, a great science fiction trilogy that has made its way to Netflix, you should check it out. It's fascinating. Dave, what are your reflections? Are you watching it?
All I know is I can't unsee a certain episode. I won't say which one, but there's a certain episode that I.
Well, this is going to be a really engaging podcast. I like the episode I can't talk about.
Well, guys, so can we give away a concept, or is that like spoilers?
It involves nanofibers.
I like the subtlety of the women being the powerful,
in charge.
Like, yeah, they're like the powerful scientists. They're God. Whoever the representation of God is, there's a lot of like feminine characters that are powerful, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I guess we shouldn't do any spoilers because there's a really cool concept that is relevant to this theme of AI, but maybe we
look.
Yeah.
It's so good. You should really read the books. That's my elitist plug. I read them. I absolutely love them.
Can ChatGPT summarize them for me?
No, well, maybe you'd miss a lot.
I mean, the series kind of summarizes that. That's my one sort of criticism.
All right,
of it.
So that's good. We can go there. That's safe. What is this? What is the lesson? What is the summary of the three-body problem?
It moves too fast, I think.
No, we're not giving the summary. He's just saying that it summarizes too much from the books. Like, read the books because you'll get all the good details.
It's only 8 episodes.
No, but there's going to be more, right?
I forgot what's in which book, to be honest, from the narrative. So they did not get to my absolute favorite part of the Wall Facers and like what happens there, but it's so good.
I assume that's going to be next season.
I think these 8 episodes are really a tease. Like 8 episodes it's not a series. It's like a mini series.
Yeah, and it strikes me also that this thing could have been, 8 seasons, like Game of Thrones scale, and they kind of tried to pack a lot into season 1, and could. Well,
maybe season 2 will be 100 episodes.
It has one of the same co-creators, right, David Benioff?
Oh yeah, it's all the same team. Yeah,
a lot of the same characters too.
There is a Chinese version of the show that's many more episodes, but interestingly, also and unsurprisingly, like edits out the Cultural Revolution.
Well, but like, let's also define, we are talking about this one concept, wall facers, which is at some point in the series and the books, humanity realizes that this incoming alien race can read and understand all of its communications, but cannot understand what's going on inside of human heads. And so these certain people get designated as the infinite resource people to
allocators.
Come up with plans that they can never share outside of their minds to protect humanity from this future threat that's arriving in 400 years. And so it is, I think, an apt metaphor for what we've been talking about this entire show.
It's really cool. I'm enjoying it. Oh, well, we finished the season, but
look, there's the game theory, Dark Forest, so good. There's just so much. It's great.
It's really good.
Plus, it is the ideal way how I would like to operate, which is purely in my head, not talking to anyone.
yeah, clearly this is.
Which is why we got you to do a podcast, Sam.
Sam, we're
man.
watching it, and Sam's like, "Yeah, my ideal is staring at a wall, talking to no one, thinking only about my awesome thoughts." I was like, "Yes."
Well, we did get Sam to work as a part of this team. Let's be real.
The problem is that you have the right answer, but then getting the fucking people and things to do the right answer is very difficult. I need that. I need one of the wall facer translator. Then I'll just sit and stare at a wall and be very happy.
I think that's called Neuralink, right? That's the mind reading.
No, you can't. That would fucking. Then the Santi would have access to your thoughts. You definitely don't want to throw a Neuralink into this thing.
Yeah.
Elon is probably part of the Santi.
It's just good. Any more good? I guess we're making our pop culture corner the middle segment here because we've got a couple more things to talk about. But yeah, anything
Don't we
else?
have to talk about private capital?
I do. Dude Perfect raised $100 million. Our favorite,
Didn't
our
Sam
kids.
bring that news on the pod last week?
Well, I didn't hear it, and I just tried to
clear,
again this week.
I wore the Dude Perfect hat on this pod many, many, many months ago.
Yeah, I had never heard of Dude Perfect until you guys in this pod. So
if I were a growth investor at that scale, I would have definitely done that deal.
Sam, why the eye rolliness?
I don't. No comment.
You don't like?
Okay, you don't believe on the accuracy of the reporting? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean it's complicated. They definitely raised. It's cool. I'm into it. I know too much about the deal from sources I shouldn't know about to like say anything. So nothing said.
Reporters got things wrong. Never. Well, Dave, thanks for asking about our private capital conference. So in part because of all the conversation on this pod with you three yip-yapping about tech investing all day, I decided to do what I do and just hold a conference. So on the floor, or not on the floor, but
I'm sad it happened during spring break. Can we do it not during spring break next year?
Yeah, I'm going to better organize my schedule next year, but it was really cool. So I interviewed Philippe Lafont, the founder of Co2 and a ByteDance board member.
And a great skier. Important fact.
We didn't talk about skiing. But I will say, guys, I was like stock exchange. So I wore a suit. All the hedge fund and private equity people I interviewed were like wearing jeans and hoodies. And I was like, what? Like, did they underdress because they thought it was a tech conference and I overdressed because I thought it was a finance conference? No.
You looked like you were hitting the clubs.
Thanks.
Also, because that's actually a trend now. Pop culture corner. It's trendy
Britt,
for women.
I went to Casa Cipriani last night. We got to talk about the private club scene in New York. This is huge, guys.
Yeah, workplace chic is like the trend for the clubs now. Just so you know, ladies, if you're listening.
Interesting.
Well, that was good. I was wearing a silk pajama suit. But anyway, it was a really interesting event. I'll give you a couple quick themes because I know you care so much. First, with regards to a ByteDance or to a TikTok sale or deal, both Philippe and then Anton Levy, who's another early investor at General Atlantic, were basically like, these governments have to figure out what's allowed before there's like any consortium building. So they get 11 calls a day on people wanting to buy it or spin it or whatever. But like, this problem is greater than our pay grade. I also asked them about the security concerns directly. And they were really trying to toe the line, as you can imagine. But I thought it was interesting that Anton said he empathized with the security concerns, but thought ultimately it was more fear than reality. But my take on it is they're, all just trying to toe the line there.
That's a good line. I'm going to use that.
I thought it was good. I thought, I'm cynical. So when I hear a line like that, I'm like, someone's comms person.
Yeah, that's a good comms person.
Some PR person.
Yeah, no, I'm like, someone deserves a raise. Like, that was really good.
I'm going to start empathizing with all sorts of stuff that I don't like.
Yeah. Okay. When you start empathizing with me, I'm going to throw the word out. But
that's also because these guys are capital allocators and not builders of social networks. They've never built social networks, and then they don't know what is possible in terms of influence.
Yeah.
Oh, they're pretty smart guys. They know exactly what's up. They're trading between what is obviously true to any American versus their enormous financial incentive. And empathy is a great word for that.
They also, yeah, they're like billions of dollars, national security, empathy. I'll go quickly because Philippe was fascinating. For people who want more, you can read about in the information. I asked him a lot about investing in AI and how he thinks about all the CapEx and the unproven business models and the consolidation. And he basically said that like startups have to be careful because they're mortgaging their future to Microsoft and Google by buying all this compute. So for people who are interested in that topic, you could double click there, so to speak. We also had Chris, the CEO of, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget, but the first Sora, before there was Sora, Runway? What's it called? The video
Runway
company?
Runway
Yeah.
ML.
Runway.
Yeah.
Who I've always thought is really thoughtful about this.
I love Runway.
Speaking of investors in AI, we had Ibrahim Ajami, who runs venture for Mubadala, which I now know how to pronounce correctly. So glad about that. And that was also really fascinating. We've talked a little bit about sovereign wealth getting into AI. This was the first real interview he'd given on it, at least in recent history, about how they're thinking about it and their advantages in chips and energy and why this is an important moment for them. He also said, like, we've learned from the Vision Fund, which they were a part of. And he's like, market distortion is going to happen when you throw this much capital into the scene. But like, by the way, it's already kind of happening. And so he had a lot. Yeah, it was very interesting to meet him. I'm grateful he kind of flew in for the event because I think it was a interesting perspective that you don't often hear. Lastly, some IPO talk, another big theme on the pod. And actually, Philippe said he talked a lot about how the IPO market has changed quite fundamentally. And he spoke in some depth about like because the buyers have changed so much and that it used to be you had more mutual funds that would kind of buy a sector, including like these new issuances and baskets and so forth. And he's like, that's just like all changed with ETFs and other things. So that struck me as interesting because it's not just about thinking about it's a cycle and it will automatically turn back to where it was. And he was saying that he thinks now you can't really go public at less than a $5 to $10 billion valuation, which is
that sounds low.
Well, that's which it was a pretty big sea change. So yeah, all in all, it was quite informative. And I think it's interesting. Both Philippe and Anton actually think there's still investing opportunities in China, which probably falls into the camp of investors thinking investing opportunity. Probably isn't news that investors see investing opportunities, but that kind of came down to, yes, there's like major geopolitical risks, but prices are just so low. I brought up, well, there's no real exit.
The price for anything.
Yeah, but that was their point. So anyway, you can read more about it, the information.
I just think it's funny that you hosted, very telling that you hosted a private capital conference at the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, I think that's really great. It also was very much a private and public capital conference, but I thought since we were the information,
that's too long of a title.
But yeah, and also the lines are.
It also could be a private capital conference.
Oh,
yeah, just call it the Capital Conference.
Yeah, it's a secretive
it's private,
capital
and
conference.
that's because it's actually valuable information that you haven't traded away for 1 cent to an LLM.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people came up to me and they're like, I'm surprised this is actually valuable. And so I thought that was kind of funny.
Charge more, Jess.
You can just call it the Capital.
That's good. And then you're just going to tell me to call it Capital and then we'll have a problem. But it's always fun. You guys know this. You all do a lot of different community events in your day job to actually like hear from your readers and subscribers so directly is really awesome. And it was, Philippe said he reads 2 things every morning, page 6 in the information. And then someone else was like, I read 2 things every morning, the Economist and the information. And I don't know quite what to make of. I think we're in good company in either respect, right?
Indeed you are.
So that's happening here. What's happening out there this week on the West Coast?
We're in the far west. We're on spring break.
West.
We're in the very far west coast. So not a lot's happening out here. But you guys, I think we flip-flop next week. So
yeah, we're next
we'll be able to report
breaks
from the mainland.
I told someone we had spring break next week and they were like, now? Like they were offended. It seems so late.
It's because we have ski week in California, in Northern California, which most people don't. So they have an earlier spring break. And then we happen to have 2 weeks off during the semester. So go figure.
Go figure.
The later
but our
spring
kids
break,
still
yeah.
learn, right? That's still a thing.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Maybe to close, Britt, so another thing happened. Google had its big cloud conference this week. I think you posted something out of it. Do you want to chit chat about that?
Well, I was just talking about how they are launching new features within kind of the Google Workplace suite of apps. And their newest bet is on a product called Vids. It'll be launching in
With a
public
Z?
beta this summer. Vids,
Vids with a Z?
VIDS, not Vids with a Z. It's
Thank
actually
God.
Thank goodness.
not like early 2000s. This is 2024. So Vids, it's not like AI video platforms where you can like type in text and make a video. You type in text and make kind of like a slide decky video. So a lot of people are wondering if it's going to like replace slides. And I'm wondering if all of our pitches from startup founders are going to now come in Vids, and if that's going to be better or worse
They will
for
not
venture
get read
capital.
or opened. Could you imagine?
But you could put it on 2x, Sam.
So wait, is it a slide deck or a video? Like, does it manually advance or
It's
automatically
like a slide
advance?
deck video automatically, but you kind of do frame by frame like a slide deck, and then it like plays like, I think it's
You know
more
what that's
going up.
like? That's exactly what they're going to use. The compliance departments globally are going to love this. They're going to be able to create videos for compliance that you can't auto forward through, and you get yelled at for your licensing if you create
Well, this
technology.
goes back to Zenefits. This is like
They
no
think they're going to
loophole.
turn emails into these Vids too, which I
Guys,
don't.
this is feeling like Wave. Do you remember
No,
Wave?
this is Jess.
Oh my
we
God,
must be
Wave.
married because we're on the same page. I was about to make the same point. We're there.
So Wave.
This is like
So
the
Wave.
dumbest fucking idea ever.
I didn't say that, but it is Wave.
I went to the opening Wave conference.
Yeah, I went to. I went to. We were both there.
We've been around too long.
I'll just say this now that I accept text files for pitches,
Okay.
but anyone who sends me a Wave,
Okay, we have to explain
I'm
what
going to send
Wave
you a vid.
was.
Okay, Wave. Yeah.
Okay,
Go for it.
so Wave, when Google was a little bit on
Wasn't
its
it
back
an email
foot.
client?
Well, yeah. So when it was on its back foot, and the company was on its back foot in social networking when Facebook and Twitter were growing, it of course wanted to get into social, but it wanted, it had to innovate. It couldn't do it the same way. So it's sort of like, what if email met what is now like Slack, what is now like images? They just tried to be a broad collaboration.
actually, to be clear, it was super cool, right? Like from a technological perspective, it was super cool and a cool vision. It was just like never gonna fucking happen, right? Like from a practical perspective. But it
I
was
was
not
at Google when we launched this. It was.
Like, we're opining, and Britt's like, I built this product.
I didn't build the product, but I do know the product managers who built the product, and they're really smart people. And the
They're
team was
really
actually
smart.
really
Was there a
talented.
Lars? Am I making this up? Was there a Lars?
Yeah, Lars, and then
Yeah.
Google Wave turned into Google Buzz, if you remember
Wait,
that.
Lars, the Facebook Lars or different Lars? Facebook Lars, whatever. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
Lars. Mhm.
Yeah, I like that guy. It's smart. It's like exactly like if you were thinking from first principles as an engineer in that era about how
Right.
communications work, not crazy.
Why is everyone
No.
talking about first principles? Britt, bring us into the tent of the creation of Wave. Had a great logo.
Google Wave around the same time as Google TV did, which I was on the product team for. And Wave was like the feature of the Google I/O conference, and we were kind of like the secondary. Yeah, it only lasted like a year or two, and then it kind of disassembled. So, but Vids is happening, like it or not. And I am going to get into the beta, and I'm going to make a more or less vid that's like an overview of what our podcast is about.
And I will not watch it.
It's so interesting to me. I will admit to having the article I regret writing the most in my life was one calling email dead 20 years ago, which, to be clear, I didn't actually believe, but it was like a good package to do.
I'm still seeing pitches in this realm. I will have to say there may or may not be a very interesting project spooling up in this realm right now.
But let's think of how we communicate. It's email and text messages.
Write it off now, Dave.
Right. And
Write it off.
there's plenty of room for innovation. Like, don't mess with text messages. I don't know what to say. Like,
There's been tons of innovation. Apple created a $2 trillion company off of making a text link blue in basic communication. I mean, like there's Vids is not going to work.
Okay, you're less Vids. I'm going to
You want to go more Vids?
I'm less
Vids.
I'm sorry. I can't. I love you, Google, but I can't do it.
It's okay. You don't have to love everything about the ones you love. Dave occasionally thinks an Apple product isn't going to take the world by storm, right?
It's true.
No, that's never
Although
happened.
I did see, Jess, in Apple news this week, I'm quite impressed that they've shifted 14% of iPhone production to India in a very short period of time. Which is
that's what they want us talking about.
I think Dave is always finding the silver lining. It only took them 20 years.
No, I think they started that project 2 years ago.
I think it'd be great if they just came out with ads talking about how they've shipped the most expensive product per minute use in the history of the world with these goggles. It's more than a private plane.
Let's do Vision Pro check. How many times in the last 7 days have you used your Vision Pro?
I'm really upset that we didn't bring it with us on spring break, to be honest.
That is exactly
I think we would have
why
used it a lot here.
Yeah.
I would have.
I am impressed by this spatial personas thing they just launched, actually.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Cool.
My theory is that the average headset has been used for 10 minutes. And that means
no way.
At $3,000, it's $18,000 an hour. Which is more than a G650.
Question is, why do you know that?
Yeah. I know a lot of things, Dave.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I don't think it's 10 minutes. I think it's longer than 10 minutes.
20? You think it's 20?
No, I feel like people have watched shows on it. Like, seems like a lot of people have watched the Dune.
Maybe they'll watch Vids on it.
Dune in 3D.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to do my email. I'm going to do my Vision Pro email and Vids. Just
all right.
Advance
oh my God, guys, these are too many new things. Let's
I have to go finish my solos for my private pilot's license. I'll see you guys later.
Okay. I gotta go catch up 3 days of email. See you guys later.
See ya.
Yeah, go hit some waves. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.